Good evening, everyone. This is the oral biography for Church History 202 of John Bunyan. This video, we're going to take a look at the life of John Bunyan. John Bunyan was born in November of the year 1628 in Swan Hill, London, England. He was the son of Thomas Bunyan and Margaret Bentley. His father was a tinker, was of the tinker trade. And John followed him doing the same. For many people that don't know, the tinker trade is someone that would go around house to house or city to city and fix different things inside the house or whatever needed to be done. And so he followed his dad in the footsteps. He rebelled against God as a young man and going as far as blaspheming God's name. As a teenager, he would join the army. However, he still was very rebellious in that age, and it was after one of his fellow soldiers took his place at the siege of Leicester. As he stood at Sentinel, he was shot in the head by a musket and died. John was a Puritan writer and a preacher. His parents had him baptized in November of 1628 as well. Much like the rest of us, John struggled with how a man can be saved, knowing all the things that he had done. It was not until one evening that he was reflecting on Hebrews 2:14 through 15 when he was converted to the faith of Jesus Christ. John's wife died in 1655. This left him with 4 children. One of his daughters, named Mary, who was blind. John remarried in 1659 as well. The same year that his wife died, he began to preach at the Church of Bedford. John said he would often feel the conviction of his sins before he would get up to preach. As he would take the pulpit, his nerves would calm, and he would, when he would get finished, he could barely walk down the steps from the pulpit. Not long after he became a pastor of that church, he was arrested for not having a license to preach. He could have acquired his license if he had joined the state church. However, he did not believe the things that the state church was teaching, so he did not. During his time in prison, he wrote 12 books. He was finally released in 1672 by Charles II due to the Declaration of Indulgence. It was not until 1675 that he began to preach again at the Church of Bedford. His family suffered a great deal during this time. Soon after he began to preach again, he was arrested once more, and during his imprisonment this time, he wrote one of the most well-known Christian books. That book is named Pilgrim's Progress, and over 2 centuries, this book has not been out of print. It has also been translated in over 200 languages. There were many that said that it was crazy for him to spend so long in prison and it was a waste of time. John accomplished much while in prison. As I said earlier, he wrote 12 books while in prison. Some of the books that he wrote are A Few Sighs from Hell, The Doctrine of the Law of Grace Unfolded, I Will Pray with the Spirit, Christian Behavior, Grace Abounding to the Chief of Sinners, Instructions for the Ignorant, The Pilgrim's Progress, Come and Welcome Jesus Christ, The Life and Death of Mr. Badman, The Holy War, The Pilgrim's Progress, Part 2, a book for boys and girls, or Country Rhymes for Children, Good News for the Vilest of Men, The Heavenly Footman. As I searched for some of his quotes, this one stood out to me. Pray often, for prayer is a shield to the soul, a sacrifice to God, and a scourge for Satan. Folks, if we don't learn anything out of this biography, that's something that we need to do. We need to pray often that God would protect us and shield us from the attacks of Satan. That is our one of our main defenses, is to allow God to work in our lives. And one of the other things that he said, and I believe as a pastor we need to remember this, often when I would preach, I would think that I'd done the worst job ever. I would get up, but whenever I would think that I'd done the worst, I would get the biggest response. I have felt this way in my past when I preach. God often reminds me that it doesn't matter what I think. The question I have to ask myself, was I obedient to God in my preaching? And so God often, so if you've ever read one of John Bunyan's books, if you've ever read Pilgrim's Progress or any of his books, you will see that he has been obedient to the call that God placed on his life. Thank you.